Hello, I'm Quentin Wilson, Service Manager for Alta Motors. Today, we're going to show you how to remove and reinstall the Alta battery.
First, make sure that your work area is clean and free of obstructions. Second, make sure that the Redshift has been turned off and that the blue light at the upper left-hand side of the bike isn't on or flashing in any way. Remove the seat, the shrouds, and the front fender. The front fender isn't absolutely necessary, but it can be scratched or distorted by the battery during the removal and reinstallation process. Now, disconnect the HV connector. This connector has 3 stages of removal. First, lift up on the red tab. Second, depress the orange tab, gently pushing down, then pulling up. Third, lightly depress the black tab, pushing down, then pulling up. Disconnect the low voltage connector. This connector twists off in a counterclockwise motion. Once the knurled knob has turned about half a turn, pull up on the connector. Remove the 2 bolts on either side of the skid frame that hold the hinge struts to the rear bulkhead. Remove the 2 bolts at the front of the skid frame going into the front bulkhead from the bottom. Gently loosen the 4 bolts that hold the bottom portion of the skid frame to the rear bulkhead. Take note that if you loosen these bolts carefully, you can swing the skid frame and allow it to touch the ground. This gives it less chance of falling and damaging the skid frame. Remove the skid frame and keep track of all the bolts. Place a jack with a wide surface area under the battery and jack it up until it just touches the bottom of the battery. If the surface of the jack is smooth, use a towel under the battery. It is a good idea to keep the battery from slipping. Remove the battery upper mounting bolts from each side, where the front bulkhead and rear bulkhead join. Do not mistakenly loosen the 2 Torx head bolts adjacent to these bolts. Remove the lower battery bolt. Lift the battery up with the jack about 10 millimeters, then pivot it forward. This will release the hooks from the top mounts of the battery just about where the bolts were removed. Once this is done, the battery will be free from the motorcycle and it must be treated with caution. Slide the battery forward and slowly lower the jack. Keep an eye out for anything that could potentially have hung up on the battery while slowly lowering it. Now we are ready to reinstall the battery. Make sure all the connectors are clean and give the area above the battery a quick inspection to make sure there is no debris. Also make sure that the existing wiring and connectors aren't hanging in such a way that they will get pinched or damaged by the incoming battery pack. Pull the crankcase breather tube away from the battery hook. Carefully place the battery on the lift. Tilt the top of the battery slightly forward, then slide it to the rear until the holes in the lower mounting brackets are above the mounting holes in the rear bulkhead. The hooks at the back of the battery are a very exact fit between the rails. They have to go up and over the pins, but there isn't very much room above the battery, so be careful. If you are hanging up on something, you can watch the suspension move or see the entire bike lifting up. You can see the hooks making contact with the pins from the rear. Once in place, carefully lower the jack a tiny bit to make sure that it is seated. Run the top bolts in first, leaving them loose. Run the bottom bolt in, again leaving it finger tight. Then torque the bolts to 48 Newton meters. Install the skid frame and torque bolts to 48 Newton meters. Reinstall the front fender and side shrouds. Once this is checked, hook the diagnostic laptop up to the bike and make sure that the firmware is updated.